Thank you, Vidul sir, for introduction. Good morning, my senior faculty, and good morning, everyone. Today, I am here to present some slides over the recent advances in last 5 to 10 years in the department or in the field of cardiology. To start with, first of all, like in every field, we start with the drugs. We all know we have this warfarin acetylene for quite long years as a treatment of choice for AF and prevention of coagulation in various disorders. But now we are coming in a cardiology with number of other drugs like direct thrombin inhibitors, that is dabigatran, and direct factor Xa inhibitors, that is rivaroxaban, apixaban, and edoxaban. The main benefit is that they do not require the regular PTNR monitoring, and the efficacy wise they are almost equal to or better than that of warfarin or acetylene with lower risk of bleeding. So what are the limitations? Limitations is the cost. Still the cost is higher as compared to that of acetylene and warfarin. Other limitation is antidote. Antidote is not as frequently available as that of acetylene or warfarin. Third point is that they are still not approved to be used in severe valvular heart disease or post valvular surgeries. Not recommended still for pregnancy and breastfeeding and renal dysfunction with creatinine clearance less than 30 ml per minute and severe hepatic dysfunction. So other is after the anticoagulants, we move on to the other important field of cardiology, that are the dyslipidemia or the drugs that reduces the cholesterol level. Of this, statins, the recent changes that are made in the guidelines for statins are that now they are dividing the patient whether we have to give statin or we have not to give statin. The values are not as important as that earlier. So they have divided the people into 4 groups. First is a patient is having clinical associated cardiovascular disease, then we have to give statin in moderate to high dose lifelong, whatever be the level of LDL. Even if LDL is less than 70, still we have to give them statin in minimum moderate dose, or even we can give them as a higher dose. Second is, if we find primary elevation of LDL more than 190, whatever be the age of the patient, we have to give minimum moderate to high dose of statins. Third is patient with diabetic with age between 40 to 75 years with even LDL level of 70 to 190 or 189. So a diabetic with age group between 40 to 75 with LDL level of 80, still we have to give them a minimum moderate dose of statin. Now a patient or a person with age group of 40 to 75 without even clinical atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease or diabetes or LDL level even between 70 to 189, but the estimated 10-year atherosclerotic cardiovascular risk is more than 7.5%, we have to give them minimum moderate to, or we can go for high dose of statins in this group also. Now after statin, the other drug that is approved for use to reduction in the LDL levels is PCSK9 inhibitors, that is alirocumab, bococizumab and evolocumab. These are given as a subcutaneous injection once in 2 weeks or once a month. Other newer drugs is bempedoic acid. It is indicated as an adjuvant to diet and maximal tolerated dose of statins with ezetimibe for treatment of adults with heterozygous familial hypercholesterolemia or estimated atherosclerotic cardiovascular risk who require additional lowering of LDL. If patient is on statin maximum dose with ezetimibe, still having LDL level of more than 100 and having atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, now the drug to be added is bempedoic acid. Now these are other drugs that are in the fields of statin in the field of cholesterol reduction. These are antisense oligonucleotide against apolipoprotein B, that is mipirmersan. Then microsomal triglyceride transfer inhibitors, that is lomitapide, and ApoA1 mimetics. After anticoagulants, statins, now we move on to the heart failure treatment. The three classes of drugs that are newly added in the treatment of heart failure are, first is ARNI, that is valsartan sacubitril combination. It is said that in patient with chronic symptomatic heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, NYHA class 2 and 3 who tolerate ACE inhibitors or ARB, still we have to replace them with ARNI so that we can provide them additional mortality and morbidity benefits. Mortality benefits are still reduced by more than 18% as compared to over and above that are provided by ACE inhibitors or ARBs alone. Now the second drug that is has a class 2A recommendation is ivabradine. can be beneficial to reduce heart failure hospitalization for patient with symptomatic, stable, chronic heart failure with reduced ejection fraction who has given guideline directed medical therapy, including beta blockers at maximum tolerated dose, but still having sinus rate of more than 70, then ivabradine has to be added so that it reduces the rate of recurrent hospitalization to that patient. After that, SGLT2 inhibitors, we all know they are used in diabetes, but now they are also approved in patient for the heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, even heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, they have shown benefits. So, patient is having diabetes or not having diabetes, they can be given in patient with heart failure with heart failure patients. Dapagliflozin approved in 2020 and EMPA is approved in Europe, and these are the only drugs that have shown mortality benefits in patients with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So, after drugs we move on to investigations. First is ECO. So, in ECO we all know that is 2D ECO. Now, we are moving over to 3D and 4D ECOs. This is how a 3D ECO look like, upper images of that of 2D ECO. Now, in 3D it is better delineated, we have 3-dimensional view of heart and we can get a better images of valves or valvular lesions, or it is particularly helpful for ASD intervention or VSD intervention, so that we can look for all the margins can be easily seen, we can easily define our intervention according to the image. So, after ECO, we move on to the angiography. Traditionally, we all know angiography is done invasively, which is still the gold standard, but now we can go for CT angiography without invasive procedure. This is how a CT angiography look like. Then the sensitivity or specificity of a 64 slide MDCT is equivalent to that of 94% and 97%, it is almost equal to that of a invasive angiography. Particularly useful for evaluation of graft patency, because most of or some of our patients usually forget their records. We have very difficulty in doing an invasive angiography, in particularly post CABG, if we do not know where the grafts are placed or how much grafts are placed. So, on this patient it is very easy. So, first we do the CT angiography, we can easily identify the grafts, number of grafts, and we can look for the patency of the grafts. So, after angiography, now we move on to the cardiac MRI. MRI is done all in every field. So, now it has come into cardiology also. Advantages. So, it is MRI gives particular patterns in particular disease. Like we can easily differentiate a patient with LV dysfunction, whether it is because of ischemia or a non-ischemic cause. Ischemia MRI has a subendocardial infarct or a transvalvular infarct, while non-ischemic it is divided into 3 types of categories, like they will give a mid-valve hyperenhancement or epicardial enhancement and global endocardial enhancement. So, we can easily differentiate between the various diseases causing LV dysfunction or cardiac abnormalities. This is the cardiac MRI image of arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia. We will know that this ventricular ectopics, particularly in a young patient, are quite common. So, if they are coming from RVOT, whether they are a benign ectopics which only requires assurance or beta blockers, or they are episodic because of this deadly disease, that is arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, we can easily differentiate with the help of cardiac MRI. So, this is a cardiac MRI of a sarcoidosis patient, a young patient of around 47 years or a young patient around 40 to 50 years if present with complete heart block. So, the diagnosis is complete heart block and we will implant a pacemaker. But if we do not do a cardiac MRI of that patient, then it can be deadly, because it can be because of a sarcoidosis, and if it is because of sarcoidosis, then we have to go for a ICD, because they have increased risk of VT. Simply implanting a pacemaker will not help that patient. So, in these type of scenarios, cardiac MRI is very useful. Then after investigation, we will move on to the our favorite field, that is the intervention in cardiology. In intervention starts with the imaging. Now, like the ultrasound we do in body, there is also the ultrasound of the coronary artery itself. It is known as IVUS. In this, due to relative equivalency of the media compared to that of intima and adventitia, we can easily differentiate the 3 layers of the coronary arteries. that is, it will seen as bright, dark and bright. This is an example. In this example, the upper arrow and the lower arrow, this angiogram is showing a normal image. There is no blockage. Whole the caliber is normal of that the coronary artery. But the right side image of the upper artery is showing a normal lumen. But while the lower right image, there is a plaque around 50% stenosis is there. So simply by this showing an angiogram, we can easily miss that plaque. So by the help of IVUS, we can identify such type of atheromas in a coronary artery. So after IVUS, there is OCT. It is similar to that of IVUS, but it uses the infrared rays and have better imaging quality as compared to the IVUS. So in this, we are also seeing how the coronary artery look like, how atheroma look like, or how, so that we can plan our stenting angioplasty or intervention. A lead is implanted besides the sternum, and a generator is implanted subcutaneously, and just ICD can work without going invasively inside the venous system, because going inside the venous system increase the risk of DVT and increase the risk of infection. So we can just reduce all these things with going for subcutaneous ICDs. So after cardiology intervention, there are newer things added in for the stroke intervention. We all know that atrial fibrillation is a common cause of stroke. It affects, and AF itself is a common arrhythmia. Around 1 to 2% of the general population have AF, and AF itself increases the 5-fold increase the risk of stroke. Other thing important with AF is that over 87% of the strokes are thromboembolic, and more than 90% of the stroke that occurs in patients, particularly the AF patient, are because of thrombus originating from the left atrial appendage. AF related strokes are more debilitating as compared to non-AF related stroke because the thrombus burden is high. So the drugs that are used for prevention of stroke in AF patient, traditionally we use warfarin. Warfarin reduces the risk of stroke by around 60% and mortality by around 26%, while the antiplatelet, that is ecosprin, reduces the risk of stroke by 22%, but there was no significant reduction in the mortality. So we use something that is more beneficial than that of warfarin or ecosprin. Since we know that more than 90% of the thrombus in AF originate from the left atrial appendage, so this is a device that closes the left atrial appendage and reduces the risk of stroke in patients with AF. Known as the Watchman device, just transfemoral we pass from the RV to RA across the interatrial septum and implant this device into the left atrial appendage and causing the closure of the left atrial appendage and reduces the risk of stroke. It is approved in patients who do not, who cannot or have contraindications for anticoagulants. So after this, we have ASD, VSD, PDA and RSOV occlusion devices that can be done transfemorally. This is an example of PDA occlusion device, Emplar's device. This is how it looked like. The right upper shows a PDA connecting from this aorta to main pulmonary trunk. Then the device is implanted in the C part, and after the device implanted, there is no dye going inside the main pulmonary artery. That is, the PDA is closed. So in some patients, if having diffuse coronary artery disease and we cannot do angioplasty or coronary artery bypass, then newer devices, that is the coronary sinus reducer system, is approved. It is implanted into the coronary sinus, increases the venous pressure, so it increases the coronary flow, and reduction in the angina will occur in these type of patients. Now, the other thing is recently coming is His bundle pacing. Traditionally, we implant a lead into the RV that cause left bundle branch block pattern and increases the QRS duration. And increasing the QRS duration in a patient with pacing, with ultimately over the long years leads to LV dysfunction and reduction in the LV ejection fraction. So to overcome this, more physiological pacing is coming up. It is known as His bundle pacing. The RV lead is placed at the His bundle. It will cause narrowing of the QRS complex, and the chances of reduction in with long-term RV pacing is reduced. So this is a new upcoming field of His bundle pacing in cardiology. Then Other thing for tachycardias, whether it is PSVT or VTs or AVNRT, AVRT, with the help of EP study and RFA, we can ablate the extra circuit that is present in these type of patient, and patient can be 100% cured without from AVRT, AVNRT, and they may not require drug therapy after that. Now, from this coronary part, now we move on to the carotid stenting. Now we can do carotid stenting in a patient with having stroke, previous stroke, or prevention of stroke. If is having carotid stenosis, we can go for carotid stenting. Then after carotid stenting, we can go for peripheral stenting. So most of the things can be done percutaneously. In now in cardiology, in many fields, this is minimal invasive type of procedures are upcoming in field of cardiology. Thank you everyone for your patience listening.